It looks like the meeting is being recorded. So good afternoon, everyone. Okay, now it's officially being recorded. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the June 27th, 2022 Park Advisory Committee meeting. We're beginning our meeting at 4:03 p.m. And Madam Chair, if you would please help us begin the meeting by calling roll.
Absolutely, Chair Obringer. We will start with Vice Chair Tsutsui.
Here.
Hello, Member Arce.
Here.
Welcome, Member Arce. Member Burke. Member Burke, I do not believe is present. Member Carey.
She's joining the meeting right now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Member Burke. Present. Hello.
I'm here.
Hello, welcome. Member Carey. Member Carey, not present, I believe. Member Chang. Member Chang, not present. Member Claxton.
Present here.
Hello, Member Claxton.
Hello.
Member Corkin. Member Corkin, not present. Member Deschambault.
Linda is here.
Hello, welcome. Member Dieter.
Here.
Hello, welcome, Member Dieter. Member Espana.
Present.
Welcome, Member Espana. Member Lacey. Member Lacey, not present, I believe. Member Mahadevan.
Here.
Hello, welcome, Member Mahadevan. Member Nason.
Here.
Welcome. Member Rickard.
Here.
Hello. Member Robinson.
Here.
Welcome, Member Robinson. Member San Wong. Member San Wong, not present, I believe. Member Simmons, I believe, is absent. Member Skarados.
Here.
Hello, welcome. Member Williams.
Here.
Hello, welcome, Member Williams. Chair Obringer
I am present as well. Thank you.
is present. And in addition to committee members, we also have board member Di Rosario joining us. Welcome, Director Rosario. We have AGM of Operations, Jim O'Connor. We have CFO and AGM of Management Services, Deborah Ocker, joining us. We have General Counsel Lynn Bourgeau joining, I believe I noticed. Assistant Finance Officer Michelle Strawson O'Hara, Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs, Eric Feeler, I believe Trails Program Manager Sean Dugan also joining, Claire Grissling, Management Analyst. Who have I missed? Sharon Clay is assisting with the meeting, as well as Julie Padmore and myself, and Callum Ross from Prime Gov. I also see Lieutenant Giorgio Chavez. If I have not missed anyone, I believe that concludes roll call.
Thank you very much. And so now I have an announcement. So the purpose of conducting the meeting as described in this notice is to provide the safest environment for staff and the public while allowing for public participation. Pursuant to the Brown Act as amended by AB 361, the Board of Directors and the Park Advisory Committee and staff may participate in the Board and Park Advisory Committee meetings via phone video conferencing and or through a hybrid of in-person and remote attendance. The East Bay Regional Park District intends to hold meetings through either an entirely virtual platform or a hybrid of in-person attendance with the Board of Directors, designated staff, and limited members of the public to participate in person at the Park District Headquarters, 2950 Peralta Oaks Court, Oakland, California, and through the Park District's virtual platform, Zoom. The committee decides to hold a hybrid in-person meeting. Attendance by members of the public will be subject to a maximum capacity of 5, as well as compliance with current health and safety protocols. And this information can be found on the agenda on the district website, evparks.org. Do any committee members have questions about the meeting procedures? Okay, hearing none, we will proceed with the agenda. And so the next item on our agenda, we've got item number 2, approval of the minutes from our May 23rd meeting. First, do we have any questions from committee members about the May 23rd meeting minutes? Okay. Oh, I see Linda has her hand raised.
I just want to follow up. At our last meeting, there was a discussion about whether or not there'd be options to relook at. I am one that prefers the more detailed minutes than these action minutes. I don't know if there's any update on going back to those or any discussion of that.
So I'm going to defer to staff as well as the Park District board member who we have here today to see if there have been any additional discussion around this matter. Okay, it doesn't look like there has been, so I think that still needs to be resolved. Oh, board member Rosario, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make it note that the board members are aware, and we also have the same discussion for our minutes as well. So I think those are discussions we're going to be having in the very near future. So your fate on the minutes is the same as ours.
Well, pending knowing we will have further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
I think I heard Rick.
You did.
Although it's very close, Deb, so we'll get you next time. So a motion by Linda, a second by Rick, and Madam Secretary, if you would please call the roll to see if we are going to support. Oh, it looks like Irene, I'm sorry, you had a point of order you wanted to raise.
Right. I just wanted to say that I am more inclined to vote no again, so that this, because I don't think it's right that our board members do not know what our comments are. So I just want to let everybody know that I will remain with voting no on these minutes.
Thank you, Irene. Before we take a vote, is there anyone else that wanted to make a comment regarding the minutes? Okay, I don't see anyone's virtual or physical hand raised, and we do hope to get some resolution to this matter soon. As I think it's been going on, this will be maybe the 3rd meeting that we've been talking about this. Okay, without further ado, Madam Secretary, if you would please call the vote.
Absolutely, Chair. Vice Chair Tutui,
Aye.
Member Arce,
Yes.
Member Burke,
Yes.
Member Carey, Member Carey not present, Member Chang not present, Member Claxton,
Yes.
Member Corkin,
I abstain.
Member Corkin abstain, Member Deschambault,
Yes.
Member Dieter,
No.
Member Espana,
Yes.
Member Lacey, Member Lacey not present, Member Mahadevan,
Abstain. I wasn't here.
Member Mahadevan abstain, thank you. Member Nason,
Aye.
Member Rickard,
Yes.
Member Rickard, yes. Member Robinson,
Yes.
Member San Wong, Member San Wong not present, Member Simmons, not present, Member Skaradoff,
Yes.
Member Skaradoff, yes. Member Williams,
Yes.
Member Williams, yes. Chair Obringer,
Yes.
Chair Obringer is yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Motion passes with motion made by Member Deschambault, seconded by Member Rickard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to item number 3, board member comments, and it's my pleasure to introduce board member Dee Rosario for any comments that you would like to share with us today.
Thank you, Chair Obringer. Welcome. I just wanted to welcome everyone. Thank you for being here this afternoon. I just wanted to let you know that the Board of Directors just recently had a study session, which is now the new name of what we used to call workshops. And I found it to be extremely valuable, a new way of doing things, a new presentation. We got presentations from every assistant general manager and the state of their departments currently, and more importantly, which was something I think the board was very receptive to, was what of their departments need. And it was a very, very good presentations by all of our departments. And it really gives the board members an opportunity to reflect on those presentations as we make our priorities for the coming year. So I believe those are recorded and they're available online. Deborah Ocko can confirm that, because they are public meetings, and I encourage you to attend those if you can. And also, we're having a tour, a field trip, and which includes Garin Regional Park. And I encourage all of you to attend. These field trips are incredibly valuable because we get to see things on the ground as they are, and we get to see some completed projects, and we get to see some before. So I encourage you all to come. And then also something I do, I encourage you to meet with your board members on just to catch up. I know I meet with my appointees as time allows, and I find them to be very valuable. So thank you again. I'm really looking forward to this to your agenda. One of them is on this project at Briones, and so looking forward to it. And I will leave you to your work, but I will be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, we were hoping that you would stay with us. So thank you for making the time. As we have several items on the agenda that I think that will be of interest to you tonight. So the next item we do have is public comment. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone who is here from the public who would like to make a comment on an item that is not on the agenda?
We do have 2 members of the public. We ask that if you are commenting on a specific agenda item, that there is a public comment period after the agenda item. Otherwise, if you have a general public comment item, 3 minutes are allotted for public comment at this time. I have Ken and Sue, who are members of the public.
Okay, great. Okay, so Kevin, did you want to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? Okay, great. We can unmute you.
Hello.
Or maybe you, okay, there you go.
Can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
My name is Kevin Smallman, and I'm a longtime resident of San Leandro. I love open space, trails, and cycling. In the April PAC meeting, a sentiment was stated with the goal to hear what the public wants for trail experiences. The following is my personal ask. For me, there's something almost primal about being able to roam far over vast landscapes under my own power. I want to be able to be absorbed into open spaces on a bike. I appreciate the district's drive to acquire and preserve lands for everyone. I would like to have access to these on my bike. I dream about bike packing on single track from my home in San Leandro to camp at Del Valle on a weekend. I want to ride home from work at the base of Mission Peak through Sunol, Tyler Ranch, and Lake Chabot as a way to incorporate adventure and decompression to a stressful day at work. I would like quality recreation trails to become a staple throughout the EBRPD. Trails as diverse and unique as the lands they lay on. Trails that encourage usage, trails that have a sense of place and purpose. I want trails that reward my efforts by efficiently bringing me through the landscape. I want trails available to mountain bike in the East Bay with similar texture found on Redwood Peak Trail and Madrone Trail, open to hikers in Redwood Regional Park. I would like legal trails like Oat Hill Mine, Braille, Marie Creek, and Roughgo, closer to home. I look at rock scrambles to the summit of Mission Peak and rock climbing opportunities in Sunol as examples of providing challenging user experiences. They allow for us to feel the land, the rugged, untamed texture of nature. These examples are sustainable and seem to be considered acceptable in the parks. I want trails to be cared for like a golf course, methodically curated for park users to enjoy. If trails are the predominant way users interact with the parks, how can the experience be optimized? It's not fair to say we value trails and then proceed to allow cowpocking to occur without practical systems in place to restore optimal experiences. Unlike hiking and horseback riding, park ordinance limits my mountain biking to designated trails. I do not have the freedom to roll off a trail and explore the nuances of the land. I do not have the privilege of climbing to the top of a remote hill to escape the pre-designated experience developed through natural surface trails. East Bay Regional Park District, please embrace the joy of experiencing nature while on a bicycle. Add well-managed, narrow, natural surface trails to Garin, Dry Creek, Sunol, Mission Peak, Anthony Chabot, Redwood Regional, Sibley, Las Trompas, Tilden, Tyler Ranch, Morgan Territory, Wildcat, and local SFWD and EB mudlands you connect with. Thank you so much.
I think you're still muted, Carlin.
Strange. Okay, thank you very much, Kevin and Kelly. Kelly Abreu, I see your hand is raised. So if you do have a public comment that is not related to a specific agenda item, please go ahead.
Well, I'm very inspired by what I just heard about these natural rock scrambles at Mission Peak. Naturally, I was fascinated by the concept. Let's go down the list of what I see at Mission Peak. First of all, the last quarter mile or 700 feet of trail is illegal for bicycles at this time. So there are bicycles at the top every day, but they're all illegal. Just a little note there. I don't think that ever gets enforced, but let's just let's just call it for what the signs say it is. And then the rock surface natural scrambles, that's very true. The last 800 feet of Mission Peak, the topmost, is rock scrambles everywhere. And there's an ever widening natural surface there, which is some people might call it natural, other people would call it eroded. And if you talk to the people who used to be proudly members of the Coalition to Save Mission Peak, which they've all disappeared, by the way, because they lost a lawsuit against the park district. But if you talk to them, they would tell you that these trails are degrading due to overuse. When in fact, if any of you have been to other parks in other places, for example, the Mount Umnum or maybe Mount Diablo near the top or wherever, Mount Umnum for sure. A lot of these trails in various places, out there by Golden Gate National Resource Area, out there by Golden Gate Park. These are very well maintained. They've got, highly engineered stairs and steps. Norway builds world famous, they bring in stone workers from Nepal to build their trails. So these people, they want their trails on their mountains to be very well maintained and very carefully engineered to handle the traffic loads that they expect. Mission Peak is none of that. Mission Peak is degrading and is not carefully engineered and has no handrails and has no steps and is a rock scramble. And the question is, should it be? Maybe given the high level of traffic up there, maybe the steps, the handrails, the careful hard surface engineering, rock steps or wood steps or whatever. Maybe that is what is needed for a high traffic area. And maybe this place is not getting the level of engineering care and diligence in trail engineering that it needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have any other public comment, Madam Secretary? I don't see any other hands raised. Just want to make sure I don't miss anybody.
We have no further comment at this time, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then we're going to go ahead and close the public comment, move to our first presentation item. So we're going to be hearing about the 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, and we're going to be receiving a presentation by Assistant General Manager and CFO Deborah Acker and Assistant Finance Officer Michelle Strawson O'Hara. So we'll receive the presentation and then see if there are any questions from committee members and potentially make a motion of approval. So those are the what we're being asked to do this evening.
Chair Oberger, if I could just note really quick that the PAC Finance Subcommittee did meet with the finance team prior to this meeting and asked some questions regarding the financial report and felt very comfortable with recommending the PAC to receive this report.
Thank you very much, Marie. And Marie, for those who don't know, is chairing our finance committee this year. And I very much appreciate everyone who participated in that meeting this afternoon. I'm sorry I could not join. So that is great news. And without further ado, I will turn it over to the appropriate staff to give us the presentation.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm Deborah Acker, the Assistant General Manager of Finance and Management Services and the CFO for the Park District. I'm very happy to be here, joined by Michelle Strawson O'Hara, our Assistant Finance Officer. And today we are going to present you with the exciting annual financial report. We get to come to you guys at least twice a year, once to talk about the budget, and then once to talk about the prior year-end results. So today we're presenting December 31st of 2021. And we put together, I think you all got a hard copy of the report this year. Otherwise, it's available on our website. Yes, thank you. And, we're very proud to present this. This is our audited financial report. We have our independent auditors, Brown Armstrong, that have been reviewing our work for a couple of years now. And Michelle heads up the team that puts this together and is responsible. Kim Belinget's been our accounting manager for years and years and really pulls it all together. I'm really proud of the team. And I'm really proud. Michelle's going to give you a presentation and go into all the details, but I'm very proud of the audit results that does give us what they call an unmodified opinion, meaning a clean opinion. What they call the trial balance, the general ledger, and the financial reports that we presented to the auditors after their review. They did not have any recommended audit adjustments. They did not have any recommended changes to our procedures. They didn't find that our procedures or our internal controls had any kind of significant deficiencies, I'm very proud to say. They also review our grant funds, and they do a compliance audit called a single audit. They did not find any problems with our internal controls, and they found no findings. So that's all great news for us. The Board Finance Committee did meet with the auditors. We presented this to them last Wednesday. Went over a similar presentation, and the auditors also presented with kind of giving an overview of what their responsibilities are and what they had done as part of their role as the district's independent auditors reporting directly to the board of directors. So that was good. And I think we provided you with a pretty detailed summary of the annual financial report. I know it's not easy to read. We're very proud of it, but we understand it's not for everyone. So Michelle's going to give you a real high level, kind of to give you a sense of what our year-end results are, and we're happy to answer any detailed questions or any questions you might have about the audit or the year-end results. So with that, I will turn it over to Michelle, and she'll walk you through some of the highlights.
Thank you, Deborah. Good afternoon. I'm Michelle Strawson-O'Hara, Assistant Finance Officer, and today we are pleased to present our 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. I'd like to start off by recognizing our finance team, and in particular, Accounting Manager Kim Belingett, who had a significant role in putting this report together. There's also many other staff throughout the district who contributed to the timely completion of this financial report. As a reminder of the district's audit cycle, the interim audit kicked off in January with auditors from Brown Armstrong CPAs conducting interviews and preliminary testing and reviewing internal controls and compliance. Then at the end of April, they conducted their final fieldwork testing, which was again done remotely for the third consecutive year. The testing and financial report preparation continued through mid-June when we were able to finalize the financial reports. In addition to our presentation today, we presented to the Finance Committee last Wednesday, as Deborah mentioned, and the audit partner from Brown Armstrong, Rosalba Flores, was on hand to discuss the independent auditor's report and to confirm that the district received a clean or unmodified audit opinion. In the introductory section of the report, you'll see the Certificate of Achievement in Financial Reporting Award from the Government Finance Officers Association, which the district has received for 21 consecutive years. We will again submit for the award for the 2021 report. The first financial statement is the statement of net position, which shows the total increase in net position to $937 million, which is primarily made up of net investment in capital assets as the district continues to invest in land acquisitions and development. You can see how the increases in investment in assets, the blue line, is relatively consistent with the total net position, the green line. Investment in capital assets have increased approximately 65% over the last 10 years. This next slide is a summary of the governmental funds balance sheet, which includes the general fund, debt service fund, project fund, and other non-major funds. The district's governmental funds have a combined fund balance of $291 million, which is an increase of $8 million from the prior year, primarily due to an increase in grants awarded during the year for acquisition and development project costs. Governmental accounting classifies these fund balances in a hierarchy, breaking down the fund balance into what's available to spend and what isn't. At the top are the non-spendable balances, such as inventory and prepaid expenses. The next section is restricted by external parties, legal agreements or requirements or contracts. Committed balances are where the board has passed a resolution to set aside money for special circumstances, and these funds can only be used in compliance with that resolution. Assigned are funds set aside for a specific purpose, such as election costs and legal contingencies. And unassigned is what's left over for future spending. This next slide is a summary of the governmental funds statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, which can also be found on page 38 and 39 of your report. The most significant changes from prior year were decreases in property tax assessments in the debt service fund, as the debt levy was reduced and there was a related reduction in the scheduled debt service payments, as new bonds weren't issued until 2022. Also, investment revenues were reduced due to unrealized losses, and grant revenues increased the project fund. This next slide looks at the general fund budget to actual, which shows the original approved budget, the final budget, and the actual expenditures and revenues for 2021. In the actual column, the net change in fund balance was negative $500,000 for the year, which was attributed to increased property tax revenue being offset by unrealized investment losses. And the majority of the expenditure variances were related to salaries and benefits, which included negotiated wage increases and equity adjustments, but ended the year under budget due to staff vacancies. These next couple of slides look at our pension and retiree medical plans. The district's other post-employment or OPEB and pension liabilities include CalPERS and the district's plan, and they amounted to $56.5 million as at December 31st. This was a decrease of $81.3 million over the prior year. To help mitigate the district's future retiree obligations, the district set aside a total of $10.9 million in the irrevocable Section 115 pension trust for funding anticipated increased costs of the CalPERS miscellaneous plan. When we look at the pension funding progress, we can see that the district is funded at a range of 85% for the CalPERS miscellaneous plan to over 100% for the district's OPEB plan. While these are considered well-funded, it's good to keep in mind that these rates represent just a snapshot in time, and these are going to fluctuate based not only on the contributions and assumption changes, but also changes in the market conditions. The district is continuing its strategy to pre-fund the pensions and contribute to the pension trust. Staff is requesting a recommendation from the committee to bring the annual comprehensive financial report to the board of directors for acceptance at their July 5th meeting. And that concludes my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
I might just add a few things to Michelle's presentation. Michelle, thank you so much. It helps to have a presentation at that high level, but I do want to reiterate that the district is in good financial health. Our overall assets have grown and our liabilities have been reduced. Again, Michelle mentioned that this is a snapshot in time at December 31st, and that, as you know, our investment markets have been quite volatile lately. So when we talk about these pension liabilities being reduced by $80 million, the district has not paid down our obligations by that much. It was really the market value adjustments at that time that gave it that huge swing, you know, going from last year's liability of 138 million to this year's liability of 51 million. So I will say, regarding pensions, because it is a very big part of what we talk about when we're looking at fiscal health of an agency, the district has several strategies to manage our pension liabilities, and the board has been very committed to creating that pension trust that we talked about and funding it so that we can keep our rates stabilized. We also pay in advance of what's due to alleviate interest costs to our CalPERS pensions, and we pay down directly when we have excess funds, when that's appropriate, to manage our long-term liabilities. So that's all good news. Overall, our general fund balances are in good health, as well as the district. As you all know, that the district has a lot of long-term needs that are out there, that, you know, we chip away at them on all these different capital projects that we have forward, but we know there are lots of things related to trails that you're going to talk about today, related to our facilities that are constantly in need of improvements. So we can use some of those reserves for those types of activities in the future. So again, we know this is a really complicated and complex document, but we're happy to try to answer any questions that you have.
Deborah, this is Sharon Corkin. I have a question about one of the schedules.
Yes, would you like to tell us what page you're looking at?
Yeah, I'm looking at page 101.
Yes.
It's the schedule of revenues. And I'm assuming that on the third row, interest including loss and FV investment, I'm assuming that's fair value.
That's correct.
The F, okay.
Sharon is calling out page 101, and this is a summary of the general fund ending results of revenues and expenditures. Michelle had actually put that up on the screen, and it does show the actuals under interest earnings as a negative $1.1 million. And that's exactly what it is, Sharon. It's marking the investments to market value at the end of the year. And those are unrealized losses, which means at the point in time you value your investments, but it doesn't mean that you've truly lost that value in your portfolio unless you were to sell everything on that day. So we don't do that. So our portfolio has continued to kind of go up and down throughout all of these changes that are put forward in the economy. We're affected by the Federal Reserve adjustments and all those things.
Thank you. I understand that. My question there is that this is just a lay question. Is that a reflection of the low interest rate in 2021?
You know, the rates have continued to go up and down. And so this is valued at December 31st. So it was prior to the Fed actually making the interest rate changes. But as you know, sometimes markets react to things prior. It may have actually been affected more by the global situation we have. And other things rather than just, I think the markets knew that inflation was a concern and that the Fed was going to take action. So as I mentioned, the markets have kind of continued to fluctuate. But I think the good news for the district is that this is an unrealized loss. And if the district holds their investments to maturity or only sells them at a benefit, then we would not incur a permanent loss or a realized loss on those funds.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And going forward, if everybody could just please raise their hand so that I can call on you and we can have orderly public comment or questions. So next I see Igor, who will be followed by Neil.
Well, thank you for a very interesting report. I'm a former life, I was an auditor, and I know that we took it as a challenge to find stuff and to consecutively, or many times, having audits where they don't find stuff that they can call you on is no small thing, and I commend you for that. I had a couple of questions about the practice of paying off paying off debt. I guess when you call it sort of more than the required amount. And my understanding is that when you do that with a house loan, the amount that's over the required amount, all of that goes to paying off the principal rather than being shuffled off to the interest. And I was wondering if that same rule applies here. And is this a conscious effort on the part of the park to try to whittle down the debt that's out there?
Yes, that is absolutely correct. The one strategy of us paying in advance the amount due to CalPERS does eliminate that extra interest if you had paid monthly payments. We pay kind of semi-monthly in advance. And then also if we do make a lump sum payment, it would just take off the principal. So that's absolutely correct. And that's why it becomes one of our strategies when it makes sense. And thank you for the comment about the auditors. We do, we've had these auditors now for 3 years, and we do find that they ask us all the same tough questions as a brand new auditor would do. So we very much appreciate them looking under, all the rugs and really doing a very complete review of our financial statements so that we feel that we've caught everything.
Yeah, it sort of takes on the elements of a trophy hunt.
Let's see, Carol Ann's sound didn't come through, but I think maybe she was calling on Neil. Is that right?
Yes, yes, I am. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much for all your hard work on this report. And your answer to Sharon Corkin's question is really a nice segue into my question, which we talked about a little bit in the finance subcommittee meeting right before this. But I was wondering if you could just say a few words to the PAC about the potential impacts of interest rate increases in the near future, and inflation as well, both of which you mentioned as important factors. And then especially with respect to the interest rate increases, how that might affect the issuance of bonds by the Park District.
Great. Thank you, Neil. At the subcommittee meeting, we talked in a little more detail. And although the financial statements were at December 31st, of course, you always want to look forward to what's going on. And again, the world markets and everything that's going on is affecting the Park District. The interest rate hikes that have been implemented by the Fed do affect the value of the investments that the district are in. And we do have an outside investment advisor that helps us manage through that. We have a board-approved investment policy that's reviewed annually that limits the amount of and type of investments to make sure that we're following the government code and that we have a very diversified portfolio. And so the district is not invested in equities. It's really just fixed income investments like US Treasuries, securities, corporate notes of a very high credit rating. And our investment portfolio is available quarterly. We publish it to the board and to the board finance committee if you're interested in the details. So at a point in time, the market values are affected in our assets, right? Now, on the liability side, everyone hears about how these increases in interest rates affect like a mortgage. When we issue our bonds for Measure WW, we can be affected in a similar way that a mortgage is because we are asking the voters, and the taxpayers to kind of allow us to issue debt for an investment of district funds, and then they're going to pay down that interest and principal. So the Park District knew that interest rates were being talked about being increased, and we tried to take swift action, and we issued our most recent $60 million bond issue in February before these rate increases took effect. So I think we did better in the market than if we would have issued debt more recently. So we're very thankful for that. And as Neil pointed out, we do continue to try to issue a portion of our debt as green bonds. So $30 million was in green bonds. So that was good news to try to alleviate the effect on the debt side. But as you know, with inflation, it affects different things that we're purchasing from time to time. The cost of fuel, of course, our utilities are affected by inflation. We did previously have some supply chain issues where we weren't able to get the goods that we needed. That's kind of, I think, cleared up a little bit. But also construction costs have increased. I don't know, in different news you hear it's like a minimum of 10% over the last 3 years, but up to 20% increase in construction costs. And we've definitely seen that in our projects. So all of that is, we have our procurement policies that try to get us the best pricing. We have our reserves to help us to make sure that we can meet our obligations. And like I said before, we have our long-term strategies to continue to fund the needs of the Park District and keep our assets in good shape, our facilities, and continue to work on our deferred maintenance where necessary. So does that cover the things you wanted to highlight, Neil?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just looking to see, I do see there's a hand from a member of the public, and I just want to see if there's any other questions from the Park Advisory Committee members before we open this up to public comment question. Okay, I don't see anyone else. So Kelly, if you have a question or public comment.
Yeah. Well, first off, for the accountants in the room, I just spent some time looking at loan payoffs and studying how they're done and what they do. They don't look at how much principal there is. They look at the present value of the future stream of income based on the future stream of monthly payments that were owed on the loan. So it's all forward-looking and with a discount rate built in. And then this idea that there's unrealized losses in the fixed income investments, that's basically a fairy tale. There's no such thing as an unrealized loss, because even if you don't sell, you always had the opportunity to sell, and then you could have gone out and invested in a higher income. During high interest rate periods, you could have found a higher income investment, a higher yielding investment to invest in, which you chose not to do because you didn't sell. So you're always going to have losses, whether you realize them or not. It's called opportunity cost. And buried in here, there's so many numbers in these reports. It's so good to look at pages full of numbers. The visitation at trails, parks, and shorelines has gone up 5% per year for over the last 9 years. It's really strong growth. And then when you talk about looking at the inflation and we're going to lose money on investments here, yes, that's true. But think about your property taxes. Typically, property taxes go up during inflationary times, and that might help to offset it. So this district is not in too bad a shape in terms of inflation exposure because of the property tax, rich revenues in property taxes. The helicopter flight hours in this thing, 8 or 9 years ago was 900 hours a year. Now, in the most recent time period, I have the data of the flight hours. It's under 500 hours. So because the helicopters are flying so few flight hours, the flight costs are now $3,000 or $4,000 an hour. So just keep that in mind. Helicopters are very expensive to fly around, and I have the numbers to back it up. But just to sum this up on this comprehensive annual financial report, it is a privilege to have financial professionals sitting here giving detailed explanations, and a board of directors and politicians and finance committees spending a lot of time looking at slides filled with numbers and talking about these numbers. Why is it such a privilege? Because there are other agencies, government agencies here in the Bay Area, cities, in fact, that they just they don't bother to spend any time at all. They pass the report, they put it on the consent calendar. The politicians spend no time looking at numbers, and they give the accountants and the directors of finance 0 minutes to explain what's going on. And that, I think, is a very bad thing. And what we're doing here today, spending lots of time looking at lots of numbers, is the right way to operate a government, to run your business, to do business in government. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I don't see any other members of the public with hands raised. Madam Secretary, am I missing anybody?
Oh, I see one.
I don't see any members of the public, but Member Dieter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes. Go ahead, Irene.
I'm sorry. No, I'm not a member of the public. I thought you were going to, I just wanted to make a motion.
Okay.
But I'd like to, contrary to what we just heard, I'd like to make a motion to pass this on to the board. But I'd like to include direction to the board to ask whether or not they really think it's important that the Park Advisory Committee review this, because we've done this numerous times and I feel that we're not really offering any advice on this matter. We have the great presentation and we have the auditors, the professionals who go through all these numbers. And but to save on staff resources and time, I just would like to make sure that the board itself thinks that it's important for us to formally say to pass it on to them, because I think it's one step we might be able to eliminate. So that's my motion.
And Irene, I would just, well, thank you, Irene. And I would just say, I think that part of what you just stated, I think that that's good for one of our other agenda items where we'll be talking about the role of the Park Advisory Committee. And, is this an appropriate use of the time? So, so I just would like to encourage you to bring this up again. We can put that, this comment in the parking lot for that, and I'll also see if there's a second for Irene's motion.
So just to make clear, the motion is to accept this with direction to ask the board if they want it for next time. If they
So
want,
I guess a question for Steph would be, should we have two? I mean, is it two? Do we take it in two parts where there's a motion for approval and then there's a second motion to also request that the board review to see if it's appropriate to have the PAC review this in the future?
I don't
so
know.
I'd be curious to see what staff thinks.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just used to how the city does it. So if the park district wants to do it differently, that's fine.
Through the chair, Deborah Ocker, I think that would be a very clear way to communicate that request, is to do it in two separate motions. I think that would be great.
Is that acceptable to you, Irene, to make one motion and then make the second motion?
Sure, I make a motion
then,
to accept it.
And I'll second that.
Okay, and just before okay, thank you, Marie. And so I just want to clarify my comments. I feel that what you had to share, Irene, has value. And so in addition to us voting on this here, I want to encourage us to also talk about this in the upcoming agenda item. So just to clarify what I was trying to say. So we have a motion from Irene for approval or acceptance of the report and approval, and a second by Marie. And Madam Secretary, if you would please call the roll, and then we'll go to the second motion.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Obringer. So motion to accept this financial report, Vice Chair Tsutsui.
Aye.
Member Arce?
Yes.
Member Burke? Member Carey? Member Carey not present. Member Chang, I believe not present. Member Claxton?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Corkin? Member Corkin, I see via phone. Are you able to hear us? Member
Sorry,
Corkin?
that's a yes.
Okay, that's a yes from Member Corkin. Thank you. Member Deschambault?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Dieter?
Yes.
Thank you. Member Espana?
Yes.
Member Espana, yes. Member Lacey? Member Lacey not present. Member Mahadevan departed the meeting. Member Nason?
Yes.
Member Nason, yes. Member Rickard?
Yes.
Member Rickard, yes. Member Robinson?
Yes.
Member Robinson, yes. Member San Wong?
Yes.
Member San Wong, yes. Member Simmons absent. Member Skardoff?
Yes.
Member Skardoff, yes. Member Williams?
Yes.
Member Williams, yes. Chair Obringer?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes, made by Member Dieter, seconded by Member Arce.
Thank you very much. And now Irene, the second motion, please.
I make a motion that we ask the board members whether or not they still want the financial reports to come by the PAC.
So that they could evaluate this situation and give clear direction as to whether or not they think that this provides value.
Correct, because we're not really advising on anything. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? Okay, well, I'll second it because I would like to hear from the board. So there's a motion and a second, and if we could please do a roll call, Madam Secretary.
Absolutely. Vice Chair Tsutsui.
No.
Vice Chair Tsutsui, no. Member Arce?
No.
Member Arce, no. Member Burke?
Yes.
Member Burke, yes. Member Carey, not present. Member Chang, not present. Member Claxton?
No.
Member Claxton, no. Member Corkin?
No.
Member Corkin, no. Member Deschambeau?
Yes.
Member Deschambeau, yes. Member Dieter?
Yes.
Member Dieter, yes. Member Espana?
No.
Member Espana, no. Member Lacey? Member Lacey, not present. Member Mahadevan, not present. Member Nason?
Yes.
Member Nason, yes. Member Rickard?
No.
Member Rickard, no. Member Robinson?
No.
Member Robinson, no. Member San Wong?
No.
Member San Wong, no. Member Simmons? Not present. Member Skardoff?
No.
Member Skardoff, no. Member Williams?
No, and I'm gonna have to leave. So hopefully if I can make my comment, I think this is not a bad discussion. I do think this is something that could be discussed under the roles section of the conversation that'll happen later, which I won't be part of. So I definitely think that's part of it. And I'll reiterate my comment that I believe I made last year, that I do think this is important to consider at the PAC. Not only for the value that we might add, but also I think this adds a level of transparency to the district, to the public members that are PAC members. So I would just throw that in there for discussion when you have the discussion later in the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Williams, and final vote for this motion, Chair Obringer.
I'll vote for yes for this, and it doesn't sound like the motion passed, but I appreciate. But I just want to reiterate, I appreciate Member Dieter raising this, and I do think it's important because there are transparency issues, as Member Williams raised, and then there's also the question of what is the board looking for whenever is it another layer of vetting that's helpful to them. So I voted for this because I was hoping that we can further engage with the board on the role of the PAC. So look forward to continued conversations about this at the upcoming agenda item. Okay, and so speaking of which, let's see what is next here. Let me pull up my script. Okay, not quite yet, because that's 5C. So next item we've got is the review of the Draft Briones Trails pilot program. And so this is going to be presented by Assistant General Manager of Operations, Jim O'Connor. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, everybody. Jim O'Connor. I am the Assistant General Manager of Operations for the Park District. I am here representing a large cross-divisional team within the Park District, from stewardship, public safety, planning, public affairs, a little bit of everybody. This is a project we've been working on for several months. It's somewhat related to the Trail User Working Group that sunsetted a couple of months ago. And it's an effort to address some of the ongoing issues we have regarding trails. So with that, and we wanted to bring this item before the committee because we look at you as informed citizens. You're not just the same as other folks out there in the public. You're informed, you understand our business, you interface with us quite a bit. So we're looking for some feedback from you, and also the opportunity to have a public forum for this project for get additional feedback. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and start my presentation here. Let's get this going. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay, which screen do you see? My notes screen?
Briones Trails Pilot Program?
Yeah, okay, it's not the notes screen. Okay, great.
It looks like we're seeing two
Actually-
slides at the same time, though.
It looks like
Yeah,
note
the next
screen.
slide. Well,
How's that?
There you go.
that's
Better.
perfect. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's go back to the future here. So in 1980, I was 19 years old, and I was in a program called Park Management down in the South Bay at West Valley College. And one of our instructors was a gentleman named Tom Smith, also known to everybody as Smitty, for people who know the West Valley program. And in our classes, we would talk about the future of parks and what was that going to look like, because we were all early in our teens, early 20s, and we were starting our careers in parks, and we were having these conversations. So in 1980, Smitty told us, you know, within the time of your careers, you're going to see a time when California hits 40 million people. And park agencies, in order to protect resources, are going to close parks, or they're going to require permits, or they're going to require reservations. And all of us were like, no, that's just crazy talk. Because on any given Friday, if we got the notion, we would throw all of our camping gear in our car, all of us, and we take off and we drive up to Yosemite. And we wouldn't get a campsite in the valley, of course, that was always packed. But we could go up to Tuolumne Meadows or to Hodgson Meadows or to White Wolf, or just go outside the park to Tioga Lake, and we would be able to camp and then go climb a mountain, whatever we were doing. So we thought that was crazy. But lo and behold, that crowded future is here. And Smitty was actually right. I just looked it up tonight, and our current California population is 39.25 million people. So he was very prescient there, I guess. So, and what is the result of all this crowding? Well, sure enough, if we look, Muir Woods requires reservations to enter that park on any day of the year. Yosemite National Park this year started a reservation system. If you come in between 6 a.m. and 4 p.m., you have to have a reservation. You have to have a reservation to climb Mount Whitney. It was unheard of. I was a ranger at Sequoia National Park and climbed that mountain a couple of times. And so now you need a permit to get up there. And of course, the East Bay Regional Park Districts were not immune from crowding either. I think all of you who know our parks well and visit our parks, you know that on weekends, and especially on holiday weekends, we often have park closures where we have to turn people away. It's very crowded in the parks. And you see the couple of pictures here. There's the classic one for Kelly Brew. It's the top of Mission Peak, very crowded place on holiday weekends. The other picture is Shadow Cliffs, which unfortunately hasn't had water for the last couple of years, but we used to have 5,000 or 7,000 people who would come from the greater region to spend their holiday there swimming and having a good time. So I want to take us down a little bit tighter and talk about Briones Park and what's happening there. And we have Kara Bocher is one of our GIS specialists here at the Park District. And she's done this great job of reaching out to Strava. I don't know how many of you have heard about Strava. Strava is an application that a lot of people use, especially cyclists, to track their rides. Tracks the time, the distance, etc. And you can actually ask Strava to send that. They take away all the personal data from it, but they'll send you the data to public agencies, and we can use that to see what are cyclists doing in our parks. So just to give you a little orientation, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Yeah, I made it nice and big for everybody so everybody could see it. Just to give you an orientation to make sure you understand where we're looking at. This is the Alhambra Creek staging area up here in the north. This is Release Valley here. Lafayette staging area here off of Pleasant Hill Road. And over here on the west side is the Bear Creek staging area. So what you're looking at here, Cara took the Strava data and mapped it onto the trails at Briones Park. And what this is showing is what has been the increase in cycle use of our trails in Briones Park from 2019 to 2021. So that's a 3-year period, 19, 20, and 21. And the pink lines, these pink lines here, I'll highlight that. That shows that those trail segments have seen a greater than 300% increase and used by cyclists, mostly mountain bikers and potentially gravel bikers. And you can see, like, if we, these segments here, I'll point out a few of them here. So these segments here have seen over 300% increase in use by cyclists in the park. The next one, these purple lines, that's a 200 to 300% increase on those trail segments. If you point out some of these here, out here, especially this area here near Alhambra Creek. And then the next blue line, the dark blue line, is 100 to 200%. And you can see that's a majority of the trails in the park. And then the light blue lines are less than 100% increase from 2019 to 2021. And then we have another map using Strava data here, which is just showing the level of use just in 2021 in terms of numbers of Strava users on that trail. And you can see, like, this pink line going all the way through to Alhambra Creek. That's the highest, one of the highest used trails in the park. And I suspect some of that might be because of the introduction of gravel bikes and the popularity of gravel bikes. So that's a great path. You can cut through the park and then get back on the paved roads and finish your ride. So this is interesting data to us, and it was used by the staff in determining how we were going to approach this project. And then here is a look using the Strava data about just generally how much increase both in trips that were logged in Strava and the number of people, individual Strava users. And you can see this huge increase during the pandemic when we went up 150% in the number of people that were biking within Briones Park, and the 154% increase in trips. Because of course, people can take multiple trips, different people using Strava. And then it's slightly tapered off now in 2021, but still a significant increase from prior to the pandemic. So what is the impact of all this crowding on trails and this increased visitation that we're seeing in parks generally, and more specifically here at Briones? Well, there's an impact to the trail user experience. I think all of you can understand that, right? So in this slide, I'm just showing you, a lot of us come to parks to get out in nature, to spend some time, quiet time out, getting some exercise, but out in nature, getting some quiet time. So this is your what you're looking for out here in these pictures here. And of course, the reality is these days is way different than that. You can see these are pictures from Glacier National Park. I was trying to get some from our local parks, but I didn't have time to get that. But this is Glacier National Park, and I think most of you have seen the headlines. Zion no longer allows people to drive into the park. Yosemite obviously has a reservation system. Zion, if you try to hike there, it's I went there a couple of years ago. It's absolutely crazy there. And then in terms of individual user types and their experience, cyclists. Let's talk about cyclists. Cyclists get out for the very same reason that you heard the gentleman earlier that did the public comment. Likes to get out in parks using a bicycle, get out far out there, get their views. But cyclists also have a unique demand for user experience that has to do with high speed, cornering, flow trails. I picked a couple of slides, a couple of the pictures you see on your slide, I'll just point out here. This is an example of a flow trail. Bank turns down here also is another example of a flow trail. And a lot of cyclists seek out these types of experiences in parks in addition to getting out in nature. Equestrians. I have a little bit of equestrian background, a little tiny bit of equestrian background back when I was a ranger. Certainly not compared to some of you that may be in the committee. But again, equestrians, same thing. They want to get out in nature. They want to spend time with friends and family. That connection they have with their animals. They also horsemanship, their skills in managing their animal, the tact related to that. And again, just getting out in parks and experiencing that. So another area of concern is conflicts between user groups. And we're hearing more and more of that. And that's part of what the board has asked you to look at as a committee over the next few months. So this is real, perceived conflict, and of course, there's some anticipation around conflict between user groups. So that's part of the impacts of crowding on trails. And then one of the ones that concerns me most as a land manager and has for years is the increasing impact of bootleg trails or volunteer trails as they're often called. And these trails are often user created to meet their own demands, their own trail experience. Like say for cyclists, they're wanting this flow experience. If any of you have ever hiked some of these trails in Briones, and I've got a few pictures here from what's called the Hank and Frank network, which goes between Old Briones Road and Alhambra Creek. And these are a few pictures of that. And you can see that the users have created trails with banks. They've created their a flow trail system within this corridor here. The challenge with that is a lot of these, all of these types of bootleg trails are unplanned. They're not designed well. They can impact habitat, critical habitats in parks. They can bifurcate habitats. And then of course, from a practical standpoint, they don't follow any types of common trail standards when it comes to outslope, the widths, how they follow the fall line, managing water. When it comes to erosion, they don't follow any of these standards because they often begin as animal trails or cattle trails, and then start to get used by users, whether hikers or bikers or equestrians. So they're not designed with the common design features that we put when we design modern trails. So let's take a little bit look at Briones Regional Park. In 2016, we hired an intern named Daniel LaFlash, and we gave Daniel a GPS unit. And we said, Daniel, go out to Briones Park and walk all of those unofficial trails, those bootleg trails, and take your GPS unit, map it, and put it into our GIS system here at the Park District. Well, Daniel did a great job of that. He mapped over 18 miles of unofficial trails or bootleg trails. And so I asked my staff this year when we started this project, my Briones Park staff, and I said, well, what do you think? How has that changed since 2016? They said, Jim, it's changed significantly. We probably have more than 30 miles now of bootleg trails in the park. And so this is a really concern for me as a land manager is how do we manage this impact to natural resources? This is a big issue for me and the park staff. And they've put a lot of energy in trying to manage this. And we need the public's help in managing this. So let me just do a little bit of deeper dive. Again, just some more pictures. You can see this picture here. I'll highlight with my cursor. Again, this is a user-created trail. It's a flow trail. Here's another one off to the right side here. Another flow trail with bank corners coming down the slope. Another one here in the center. One of the things I want to point out to you, if you see my cursor here, is that these trails don't have any outslope. It's outslope, which means they slopes to the outside, from the upside to the downhill side, which means water sheets off the trail rather than following the trail alignment and eroding. And you can see this significant lip on the outside, and that's not how we build or maintain trails. We like to get rid of that outside berm because that allows the water to sheet off. So these are not following, and again, over on this picture too, they're not following any of those common design standards that we do to reduce maintenance, to manage water and reduce erosion. And then these are just some really particularly examples of erosive behavior of this bootleg trail system. You can see the loose material here. You can see where the water is following the trail line. There's no types of dips or other drainage structures to manage that water, so it continues to erode year after year. You can see the same thing over here. What happens is that then during the wet season, the riders continue to go at the outside, so these systems expand and expand over time. And another problem we have with a lot of these bootleg trails is trying to manage our cattle fencing and have keep our cattle within the pasture zones that we've established in the park. So that's another problem, is constant cutting of fences. And then just in case you think this is just about mountain bikes, this is a picture here of a bootleg trail system that comes from one of our neighboring ranches that comes out of there. So it's not just about, and of course, I think all of you know that we have a lot of times these bootleg trails begin with our neighbors who have gates in our property. So bootleg trails are not just about mountain bikes, they're about everybody, and that's a big problem. So what do we talking about tonight. So I know that the board has asked you to look at this issue of trails and trail conflict. How do we manage the conflict between mountain bikes and equestrians and mountain bikes and hikers? And so there's two categories of solutions that I think this committee is going to look at. One is long-term solutions and the other one is short-term solutions. And when we talk about long-term solutions, we're looking at how can we expand our trail network to manage the crowding and the demand for use that we're seeing in parks, and how can we improve our trail system to meet the unique needs or wants of each user group and give them some space that they're all looking for. And then in short-term solutions, what we're going to talk about tonight is how do we manage, even if we, and when we talk about long-term solutions, I think when Brian talked to you last, he mentioned the concept of trails master planning. Well, that's the ultimate way to really look at your whole system and try to manage trail usage by looking at the whole palette of our 73 parks across 2 counties. But that, of course, takes some time. But even if we go through trails master planning, you still have the challenge of managing current parks and current trail systems in those parks. So we have to look at management strategies to how do we manage our current existing trails and how do we manage trail conflict, the impact of bootleg trails. What are we going to do about that? So the pilot project that we're talking to you tonight about and looking for your input is really about how do we manage current trails and current crowding and current conflict on our trail system. So let's talk about trail management strategies. Well, good trail planning and good design, that's the best strategy, but we often don't have that option because of the time it takes to do. In a perfect world, everybody, we would even look at our existing trails and say things like anybody's ever hiked the Del Amigo Trail, Las Trampas. It's an old logging road. It's really steep. Even the more recent Elworthy Trail, Elworthy Station here of Las Trampas, very, very steep. It was a road built for managing cattle grazing. It is not a recreational trail design that we would put in any modern trail system. But we don't have that option of doing that, or hopefully we'll go down that option into the park district in the future. So what else can we do? Well, we can look at how can we separate user types. And we do that in some cases already in our trail system. We have single use or dual use types of trails where we limit the types of users that are on these trails, especially for our narrow trail system. We can do chronological separation. This is by day of the week or time of the day. We can look at directionality, which improves safety. So on certain trails, we may have one-way direction, downhill or uphill travel. And some systems use that, and we're going to talk about that. We can talk about how can we increase awareness and predictability when you're out on the trail. So some of those things are signage, letting people know that, hey, mountain bikes use this, equestrians are on this trail. We can use bells, and I think Brian mentioned that. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Can mountain bikes have bells on them so you can hear them coming? And I'll talk a little bit more about my personal experience with this about a month ago when I went out and did some hiking at Briones on these on the bootleg trail system. And then we can also do things like pass-through barriers at congestion points. And these are often to slow down the interface where a bike trail may come into a multi-use trail or a road. So these are some ideas that the team here at the Park District looked at. And how would we apply this at Briones and try some of these out, do some experimentation with these various types of strategies. Okay. Oops, I think I missed one there. And the most important one I almost missed there at the very bottom is, again, when I look into the future and how we're going to manage our trail system, that future includes really, we need participation on the part of trail users, on part of the trail community. I can tell you my park staff cannot do this by themselves. We've had some really frustrating attempts. I think you've seen some of this in the news of trying to manage bootleg trails and restore them, just to have them reestablished within weeks of significant effort on the part of park staff. So if we're going to manage these impacts of crowding and bootleg trails. And we're going to have the participation and engagement and ownership on the part of trail users. So we're going to build that into the pilot project also. And ultimately, our success of managing trails is going to require that the public engages with us, takes some level of ownership over protecting these parks, because I think all of you know our mission is dual purpose. On one half, like the national parks and other regional trail systems, on one half, we're here to protect these resources in perpetuity, these natural resources. On the other hand, we're also charged with providing recreational access. And we've got to find that balance, but we need the help of the public. So we'll talk some more about that. So what is the goal of this pilot project that you've been hearing about probably for weeks now, and we've been anticipating tonight's presentation? So what we're trying to do is we're going to explore some management, some operational strategies to manage increasing crowding on trails that can reduce trail user conflict, both real and perceived, protect our resources, and optimize the trail user experience within the existing trail system. So that's our goal, hopefully. When we get done with this, we'll be able to meet all those three different goals. So where is this going to happen? Where is the pilot program? I did some outreach to some of the trail users, representatives of different groups. And we talked about, originally our idea was to use the entire Briones Park as our pilot project zone. But after some talking and thinking about it, we decided that we would limit it to just one portion of the park. And if you see, I have my cursor here. I'll see if I can scope this out. This is the northeast corner of Briones Park. To the north, this is the Alhambra Creek staging area. Tavan Estates, this is the Tavan Trail. And I'll get into the details of what's in and out of the zone. Down here is Release Valley staging area. To the east. To the south, it's bordered by the Sunrise Trail. And on the west side, it's the Briones Crest Trail, Old Briones Road and the Briones Crest Trail. And I'll show, I have another map. I want to get into some more detail on this. But generally, this is just showing where in Briones Park this zone, this pilot project zone is. Okay, so how long do we want to do this for? Well, at a minimum, we want to do this for a year. Hopefully get this all together and started in November of this year and go through November of next year. That gives us an opportunity to look at both the off-season and one full peak season of use. In a perfect world, I would extend this for 2 years, and we may even do that if we can't gather the data. We'll get into that a little bit here, enough of the data that we need to make some decisions about these strategies. Let's talk about the specific strategies that we're going to try in this pilot project. So one that we want to try is chronological separation of users, and specifically looking at equestrians and bikes. So one of the strategies we're proposing is an odd-even strategy. And I think I went too far. There we go. Odd-even strategy. Oops, no, I didn't. Sorry about that. I'm looking at my notes page instead of my main page. So we want to try odd even days, and we're going to do this only on weekends. It would apply only within the pilot project zone, not the remainder of the park. And hikers would not be restricted at any time. So this odd even will only apply to bikes and horses, equestrians. And so I've mocked up a little calendar here, see if I can make sure everybody understands here. So in this case, the bikes would be allowed on odd weekend days, and the equestrians would be allowed on even weekend days. So I mocked up a little calendar here. It shows that during the weekdays, all user types are allowed within the zone. On weekends, here's an odd day, the 5th, this is November. 5th of November, it would be a bike day. So no equestrians, hikers would be allowed, right? They're allowed 7 days a week, all year long. But this would be a bike only day. A bike day, no horses. On Sunday, which is an even day, be no bikes and equestrians. And you can see the way this works is it alternates each weekend from a Saturday to a Sunday. And the reason I thought this was important because I thought, well, let's say I'm a biker and I work on Sundays. Well, if it was always bikes on Sundays, I would never get to ride in that park in the zone there. It would never work for me. But this odd even switching back and forth on weekends would give everybody an opportunity to switch off on a Saturday and a Sunday. And once again, I just want to remind everybody that weekdays is open to all user types. And this only applies, these odd even only applies within the pilot project zone. Okay, another one. I want to talk about an experience I had. I went out about 4 weekends ago, and I wanted to go hike within the pilot project zone. I wanted to hike these bootleg trails and see what they were like. And I went up Alhambra Creek Trail, and then I'll show you on the map a little bit later on. But I hiked uphill all the way to what's called the Bench Trail, which is a user-created trail that almost parallels the Brianna's Crest Trail. So I got up to the junction of this bootleg trail and the Bench Trail, and I was looking at my phone, looking at my GPS function to see where I was at, just to see if I'd gotten to that point. And in the distance, I heard a bell, and it alerted me that a bike was coming. And I happened to be standing on the trail because I was trying to get my position. So I stepped off the trail, and about 2 minutes later, a group of 7 mountain bikers came along. And one of them had a bell on his bike. But I could hear it from, maybe a quarter mile away, but it alerted me that bikes were coming, and maybe, pay attention, think about where I was at and what my course of action was going to be in terms of where those bikes were coming from. And it set me on alert. It gave me the ability to think ahead and have some predictability about what was going on. So one of the strategies we're going to try here in the pilot project, and I think all of you know from Brian's presentation a month ago or so, 2 months ago, is that we have established as part of our trail awareness campaign these bell stations in Briones Park. And what we want to do within the bike zone is require that bikes at all times have these active bells. And if you look, here's the bell station here in this picture up here in the upper right. And then I've tried to give you a picture. I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but this is what these bells are like. They're like little cowbells. And they're Velcro onto your bike, usually on your handlebar. And we call them active bells because the clapper moves freely with the motion of your bike. So there's a constant slight dinging noise that comes from the movement of the bike. So it's not like you have to activate it with your thumb. And I'll tell you, just based on my own experience, I think this would go a long ways towards helping people be aware of bikes on the trail and being able to prepare themselves to find a place where, hey, here's a good place I can stop for a minute, see if the bike goes by me, rather than the surprise that often happens and really where the conflict comes in between hikers and bikes or equestrians and bikes is that surprise scenario that happens where people don't hear the bike coming and they have no predictability around how to manage that beforehand. So that's one of the strategies we're going to try is active bells all the time for bikes in the pilot zone. Another strategy we're looking at is dual use or single use trails, specifically limiting certain trails to bikes only. And we're also going to do some of those trails as downhill only. So we don't have any conflict with a bike coming down at speed with hikers or equestrians on the same trail. So that's a big problem on these. And there's some self-separation that occurs because these bootleg trails are very steep. So most people, I tell you from my own personal experience, it's not a trail you normally would hike, although I did see some footprints on there. So that's something we're going to look at is selecting some of the bootleg trails to open up for general use only during the term of the pilot project. Okay. And I wanted to throw this in here. This is a map of Apex Park, which is in Jefferson County, Colorado. And they have a bike-only system there. And you can see it's a little hard to see maybe on the screen, but on even calendar days, it's bikes only on that. You can see in the map that red trail. Here, I'll point it out with my pointer here. This red trail that's outlined here, the Enchanted Forest Trail, the Magic Mountain Trail, all of this trail that's outlined in red, on even days, that's bikes only, no horses and no hikers. And it's also directional. You can see the big arrows, it's directional in this direction here only. and they have gates where this trail interfaces with other trails and the feeder trails onto it. So this is in Jefferson County, Colorado. And then on the odd days, there's no bikes, but it's horses, equestrians, and hikers, but no bikes at all on this portion of the trail. So they're separating on days of the odd even days there in Jefferson County. And the other trails are all everyday multiple use on the other portions of their trail system. So that's just an example from another agency where they're actually have applied this. And you can see the date down there. That started at September 10th, 2020. And then getting down to something that I think is really, really important part of this project is we're going to take a real look at our engaging the trail user community and helping park staff to manage this bootleg trail system, this extensive bootleg trail system within the pilot zone here at Bion. So we're going to get hopefully organize the youth mountain biking community, hopefully our equestrian community and our hikers, and see if we can really help park staff through setting up a regular system of trail days where we do some restoration work on these bootleg trails and do some trail maintenance on the other trails. So we really have to do that. In my future vision, and I've seen this work in other places, I don't know how many of you are familiar with a group that used to be called the Mountain Bikers of Santa Cruz County, I believe it was called, and they're now called the Santa Cruz Mountains Trail Stewardship Group. And they work within Santa Cruz County and San Mateo County in the Santa Cruz Mountains. And this is a group that actually gets contracted to do trail work within Santa Cruz County and San Mateo County. And what's happened is that started as a volunteer effort and then broke off as its own nonprofit that does this trail work. But that program really works well in those two counties because the users, and a lot of mountain bikers are part of this group, but they have a real trail connection and ownership to that trail system. And therefore, they help design the trails to meet their needs, and there's a lot less bootleg trails that occur in those systems. So that's something we're in a perfect world in East Bay. Of course, we're a giant trail system, but in my perfect future, we'd really have that engagement on the part of trail users helping park staff to maintain our trail system. And hopefully do some restoration work because we really need to manage some of these bootleg trails. Some of them are in the middle of Alameda whipsnake habitat, and we need to manage that over time. Okay, another big element of this program will be public information education. I think all of you have ever initiated a new program and a change. You know how much work it is. We're going to have to really have many outreach events at the park, before this program starts and when it kicks off, to do some outreach at all of the staging areas, the entrances into the park, to make sure he's alert. We're going to have a big signage program at all of the park entrances and entrances into the zone. We're going to have to do press releases in the district website, and also our enforcement program is going to have to give a little bit of grace period at the beginning, but then we're going to have an enhanced enforcement effort here within the zone if we're going to be successful in implementing some of these strategies. So public information education is a big part of it. That's why we have public affairs involved, and we're going to have a volunteer program involved, or trail volunteers involved in this also. And then another really critical element to the project, to the program, is data collection. So we're going to be utilizing a variety of strategies around this: trail cameras, trail counters. We're going to have staff doing direct counts, meaning out there with the clicker, mountain bikes, collecting equestrians, mountain bikes, hikers, and collecting that direct data. Doing trail user surveys, whether those are done electronically or digitally, or through trail intercept surveys out there in the parks, in the zone, talking to trail users, getting their feedback on their trail experiences, how well the strategies are working. We're going to have to do continue to monitor bootleg trails in the zone and hopefully within all of Briones Park. And that's going to have to be done with dedicated staff, either student interns or temporary staff we're going to bring in to, because this can't be done just by the park staff. They have a full load just managing that entire park. So we're going to have some dedicated staffing to manage our data gathering and analysis. And then finally, just to zoom in on the zone itself and look at some of the strategies they orient you to. Again, up here, this is the Alhambra Creek staging area. This is Alhambra Creek Trail. You can see that these black dashed lines are our official trails. Those are the actual trails. These other colored lines are bootleg trails that have been mapped in our GIS system. So just to give you an orientation, this purple trail network up here, this bootleg trail network, is the infamous or famous Hank and Frank trail network in Briones Park. You can see it's quite braided, it has multiple arms to it up here. This blue line you see going this way is a traverse trail. This is the bench trail, often referred to as the bench trail. Goes along from this trail here. It parallels the Briones Crest Trail and begins just off of the old Briones Trail. We had so many problems with this trail. Staff had so many problems with this trail in terms of the cattle fence. We actually ended up having to put a pedestrian gate here because the fence was cut so often, and we had to manage cattle within this area. So that was another area. So these light purple trails, this is the Hank and Frank. I don't know, I think staff has a name for this system here. And then this purple one. These are the three we're looking at for potentially opening up for legal use during the pilot program. But we're working with our stewardship staff to evaluate that and see which trails would be best for us to open up and allow for, most likely they're going to be bike only and downhill directional only. So we're still evaluating those trails. These other trails in light green, we're still evaluating. Some of those may be tapped for restoration work, or they may be opened for use during the pilot zone. So we're still evaluating those. You'll see these pink trails. These are bootleg trails in pink here, 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 and here. Those are the trails that most likely we're going to do some restoration work on and restore those back to natural conditions as best we can. So those are, and we're still evaluating that, but those are the recommendations on park staff based on what they see in terms of usage, and also based on habitat where they're located. Let me see what else. So, I want to point out also that part of the thinking around this, and when we were interfacing with some of the trail user groups, was how do we manage, Briones is a regional park and people come from a wider region than just the local neighborhood to come to the park. So how do you manage people who come and maybe didn't look at the district website or didn't see the press release, and they drive maybe 20 or 30 miles to come either high, with their horse, or they come with their mountain bike and they drive up to Alhambra Creek staging area, and it's the non-use day. So I come in as my mountain bike and it's a non-bike day on the weekend. So what can I do at that point? Well, we didn't want to, that was one of the reasons we didn't extend the zone or the pilot project to the entire park. So if you notice here, even if you come all the way to Alhambra Creek, there's still a way that you can enter the park from that staging area and be outside the zone. And you also notice that Old Briones Road and the Briones Crest Trail are outside the zone. So they still will allow for multiple use, even on the non-use days, the alternating odd even days. So, and also the Tavalon Trail is also not in the zone. So people who are coming in from this neighborhood entrance here can still bypass the zone. Same with the Sunrise Trail, it's outside the zone. So people come from that south end of the park can still enter into the park without being within the zone. So we're really talking about the Diablo View Trail, the Alhambra Creek Trail, the Spengler Trail, the Blue Oak Trail, and I don't have the name of this trail, this connected trail here, and the Spengler Trail up here. These are all, this is all a portion of the Spengler Trail. But anyway, all those trails within the zone are just the pilot zone there. Okay. And with that, I think I'll go back to the map because I'm sure that most of you with questions are going to want to ask about the map. So with that, I'll stop there, Madam Chair, and I'll take any questions people have.
Thank you very much. And if you don't mind taking down your presentation just so we can see each other, and it'll enable me to see whose hands are raised. Thank you so very much. Okay, so I see Luana, I'm sorry, Luana, followed by Olivia and then Irene.
So yes, thank you for the report. And I liked seeing the use of the Strava data. But I didn't feel like I was able to get a good understanding of the user conflict. I would have liked to have just seen some of the Strava data from the runners and hikers to see if there's an increase too, and then also what trails they're on. So to have an idea of where the bikes are and where the hikers. And then I would also further segment it out to runners because I think as far as the runners in the area have a different pathway and sometimes it's more vert. Also, just as far as kind of knowing the time of day of usage, because I know one of the ideas is to go that Saturday, Sunday, but are there certain times of the day where you have the bikers out there versus the whole day and being able to take that from the Strava data? So overall, I would like to see more of the Strava data. At first I had a question about bootleg trails and what type of creation, like was it bike created, was it hiker created? So it was very good to see that representation on the map. And I guess I wanted to know just as far as for some of those different bike trails that were created or even different hiker trails, do we know a little bit of the motivation why they were created? For maybe a hiker trail, was an area too steep, or for a biker trail, are they trying to commute to the other side of the road? Because you had mentioned as far as like the gravel bike, or are they looking for a flow track experience? So those were just questions I had about data. And then I think as far as I really like the comprehensive strategies. There are a lot of different, I think, things that I've seen risen by different communities as far as the bells, the directions. So I thought the different strategies were very comprehensive. And then I just wanted to bring up the larger just thing is, are there flow trails regionally and in that area? And just as far as, is that maybe one of the issues for the bikes, or is it commute issues? Just what type of experience are we missing? Maybe not at that park, but maybe regionally, where some of that biking might be redirected or connecting up to some of the adjacent lands, because Briones is right there by the East Bay Mudlands, and it's also near some great cement bike paths. So those were but a great report and stuff, and excited about the pilot program and that you're moving forward with testing the different strategies.
Yeah, thank you. I think good questions. I think some of that will be answered in terms of our data gathering as we move forward in the project. That'll be part of what we'll be asking users. Some of this will have to be speculation, but we have talked with the mountain bike community. But if you go out there like I did and you walk some of these bootleg trails, they've actually created a flow trail system, on their own. So they're clearly trying to optimize their experience from their perspective, because there's bank turns, there are bank turns, there's a lot of jumps, unfortunately, which is something that is problematic for me. But there are a lot of bank turns, so they're optimizing that to create. They're essentially creating their own flow trails. That's what they're doing out there. So in terms of their motivation, I think they're trying to optimize their experience as opposed to fire roads. When I think any of you have been involved with this conversation that we've been having for months now, and that's what you hear from the mountain bikes. the fire roads are, they're not an optimal experience, and they're often very steep and very high speed, right? They're actually not designed for safety or for an optimal experience. So that's the best I can do in terms of their motivation, but that would be something we would explore through the survey process. The Strava data, Cara is really good. I'm sure she can extrapolate some of that additional data when it comes to the other user groups. So we could take a look at that and see if, how that might affect the strategies we're looking at. The other thing that's interesting, you asked about time of day. It's funny, when I was younger, I don't really mountain bike anymore, but I used to do a lot of mountain biking in my 30s and 40s. And I used to self-segregate myself from other users by going out at like 6 a.m. because I didn't want to run into any equestrians. I didn't want to have that experience myself either. So I used to go out really super early. I'd have the whole park. I'd see more wildlife. I'd do my whole thing. By the time I got back to the staging areas, that's when the equestrians were pulling in. And I was like, have a great time. I'm done. See you later. So sometimes time of day is another way to segregate. And a lot of people self-segregate that same way by going super early into parks. So thank you. Good questions. And we'll keep looking at the data. Who's next? Who's next, Madam Chair?
So Olivia followed by, I see Irene put her hand down. Olivia followed by Irene and then Linda.
Actually, I put my hand down because I thought you were going to call on me. So I'll put it down now. I will lower it now. Great presentation, I just wanted to say. And one of the nice things that I enjoyed about the presentation is that there's going to be no pilot for trying all users on narrow trails, because you realize that that's where the conflict is, all users on narrow trails. So I'm glad that it's going to be different than that. So one of the things that I hope is the very last resort is doing this odd and even day, because I think that's really, I personally have not found the parks to be so crowded that it's uncomfortable in my own experience, and I hike Briones all the time. So anyway, I just hope that that can be something, if it really gets bad, that you can consider that years from now, because I think that's really hard on users to know, is this my day? Is this not my day? So I do have a question about the fact that you're using the term that it's a pilot, as opposed to just putting forward a plan that you want to approve. You're calling it a pilot, but I don't know what benchmarks or what data you're going to use to actually say this is not working. So I think it's really clear to know, what are you going to measure of what's not working? And lastly, I also think I'm a little concerned about using bootleg trails for new trails, only because I worry about what kind of message it may send to bicyclists around the entire park district property. That if you create a rogue trail, that maybe one day it'll become a real trail. So I'm hoping that there's some trade-offs here, that maybe if you're going to improve one of these rogue trails, that you actually close other rogue trails and, and improve that. And I'm glad you're also going to do add some hiking trails for only hikers. So that's nice to hear too. So I guess my main question is what would make it unsuccessful?
Sure, good, excellent question. Good question, and it's an important question. So, we're still going to work on the data collection plan, but here's the way I would look at it: is one is what level of compliance are we getting with the strategies? Two is, what is the feedback from trail users? Do we enhance their experience? For instance, I mean, going back to one of the things you said is that the odd even, you feel like the odd even is a kind of a last minute or last ditch type of effort. But I disagree with you on that, because here's the way I think about it. Like I said, when I used to mountain bike, I would go super early, and my reason for going early is I really wanted to avoid conflict, and I wanted to have my experience without having to interfere with other people, whether it was slowing down or scaring them or, just whatever. I wanted to have my experience. So I went early. So the concept of odd even is, while it has that restrictive aspect of it, it also has giving you a level of predictability. So I'm an equestrian. I don't like interfacing with mountain bikes, but I know on this day that the probability of me running into a bike is lower because of this system. So that day I'm going to go riding because my probability of interfacing, whether it's positive or negatively with a bike, is minimized. So I can have my experience without having to have that worry that I constantly have about a bike coming around the corner at me. So this idea of predictability is an important word in the experiments. These experiments we're trying, these strategies, is can I get predictability about my experience, what I want out of my trail experience? And that's what we're going to experiment here. And what you said was not far off. Is a lot of these strategies that we're going to try, we may not implement some of them right away, but they may be used when we do a longer range trail master planning process. They may be part of a suite of strategies. Now, everything starts with good trail design, because I will disagree with you. You can design good, narrow, multi-use trails, but you have to start right from the beginning, design with good sight lines, good grades, grade reversals, etc. It can be done. I did it in my prior work in Santa Clara County. Beautiful trail system down there. But you have to do it right from the very beginning. But predictability is one of the key words to hear. Can I have predictability, whether it's hearing the bell so I can be prepared for an interface with a bike? Can I have an odd even day where I know that my probability of having running into a bike or a biker running into a horse, that there's a lower probability, and that enhances my experience because I don't have to have that worry about that, or the worry is very little. So that's my answer to you, is that we are going to look in terms of success, compliance, the feedback on trail user experience, and also the bootleg trail system, whether or not we can get control of that and stop the expansion of that and actually get some restoration. And going back to your final point, is restoration is an absolute element of this plan. I hope to have less bootleg trails in this zone when we're done than we are now. And so we have some progress forward, what I consider progress forward on managing the problem. That's really, and then really out of that is do we engage the trail user community? Do they join us in this effort? Because realistically, I have, I think it's 6 full-time rangers at Briones managing a 2,000 plus acre park. We need the public's help if we're going to maintain these beautiful places, especially as our future gets more and more crowded. The members of the public, they have to engage with us. That's how we're going to protect these places. It can't be 6 rangers managing more than 2,000 acres. So anyway, that's an important point you made. So Madam Chair, who's next? I think you might still be on mute.
Olivia, followed by Linda.
Okay.
Please.
Hi, thank you so much. I have a few questions. So in regards to the timeline for other parks, you mentioned that the pilot at Briones will go through November 2023, possibly a little bit longer. Could this mean then that other parks may not see any focus or any work in terms of mountain biking until 2024 at the earliest? And I know specifically I'm interested in the Pleasanton Ridge Park. I know that there is some interest among the mountain biking community in Pleasanton and this park specifically. And then also when I've spoken with some of the mountain bikers in Pleasanton, they thought some things were resolved. So I'm not sure if there's some sort of update that I might have missed or if it's still the same situation as before. So that's my first question. I have one other question, but I'll wait to hear an answer to that first question.
Sure. So as far as I know, nothing new has changed at Pleasanton Ridge in relation to mountain bike use there. But going to your bigger question about is anything going to get done between now and 2024, Well, I'll put that back on the committee, because one of the things that I'm hoping that this committee, the board has asked you to take up where the Trail User Working Group left off. Looking at strategies like I presented to you tonight, that could be part of your conversation. E-bikes, that's another part that this group is going to take up later in the year. I think that the committee has a real opportunity to look at these issues, and with the staff coming and engaging with you in your meetings, I think we can really take a look at some of these strategies. I think this is going to give us a place, the starting point to look at how can we manage these challenges in our parks. The way I've been saying it to people that I've been interfacing with, whether it's board members like Director Rosario or members of the public, is I'm sitting here as a land manager, and between 2016 and 2022, we almost doubled the number of bootleg trails in Brownies Park. I find that really unacceptable, and we've got to find a way to manage this. So in the meantime, getting back to your question, is we need to start looking at long-range planning, doing some trails master planning. I'm hoping that that's one of the recommendations that comes out of the PAC, is to really get encourage the district to start that process and get that going. I've seen it work. I came from Santa Clara County Parks. They've completed 4 trail master plans at the park level in their system, and it's resulted in a good engagement with all the user groups, a better trail system, a less erosive trail system, a safer trail system. I encourage you to go down, all of you, to go down to a park called Coyote Lake Harvey Bear, which is east of Gilroy and San Martin. That used to be my home park. I lived in Gilroy for 20 years. That was where I rode and hiked all the time. And if you want to see a really great trail system, go down there and do some hiking there, or running there, or mountain biking there. Or trail riding there with your horse. It's an amazing park, an incredible trail system, which really highlights some of these things we've been talking about good trail design. That park, they were lucky. They took a blank slate. The first layer was natural resources, and then they just built the trail system to avoid impacts as much as possible. It's a great trail system. I encourage you to go down there if you want to see a great trail system. Anyway, I'm sorry, I got sidetracked, but
it's okay.
Okay, Olivia, I hope that answered your question. Okay.
Yeah, and then my second one, I'll keep it short because I know we're coming up on time. The idea of communication, I know we brought this up at a previous meeting in terms of, when we'll have feedback to share with us. And I actually do have a 3-minute video from some of the mountain bikers in Pleasanton. I'm going to share it in our chat, and I actually would like to request that gets entered into our meeting minutes as part of the public record. And maybe this is more of a statement and less of a question, but just ways to think about how we also might be able to collect some of this two-way communication from members of the community. I know that there's a lot of effort for outreach and surveys, but I think that there's also an opportunity, with videos and social media, to also get some other feedback through this process.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Thank you very much. Next, we've got Linda, followed by Igor.
Yeah, I almost, first of all, this was very interesting. All of these have been interesting. I think we've heard a few different pieces and perspectives over the time, the months. And I just am still wondering of a big picture question of when and how does this pull together, and what's our role, which is next agenda item, if we can get through this very interesting, complicated one. But you've brought up like so many things that I didn't know about that were interesting. And one of the things I had a short-term question was the short term. I didn't fully and don't think I fully understand. I can hear very clearly the miles and miles of bootleg trails and all of that. But I guess in the short term, while we continue to work this out, I don't fully understand, except you made a comment of how hard or impossible it would be to do, is to actually enforce the current laws, the current regulations. And then the next question I kind of have is the biggest one of all is I'd love to see that slide again on the goals of this pilot. And I agree, what are the outcomes or measurables? But what I keep struggling, and I just honestly just don't feel qualified, I haven't been around long enough, is what is, if you line that up, what is the goal and mission of the East Bay Parks District? Is our goal to enjoy quiet time in nature? Is our goal to protect habitat for species? Is our goal to make sure every user has a place to go in our park? Does that mean we should, also be looking at skate parks? I just have a lot of questions because I don't really, I believe it or not, when I look at our website, I see our mission stated different ways, different times. So I kind of have that sort of big picture. Why can't, I'd like to know more what the problem is that we haven't been able to fix. I'd like to know more about our goal long-term. And I'm, an environmental scientist. I'm just wondering how the every other day works versus something like, how are we looking at biologist surveys? How are we looking at biologist corridors? How are we looking at seasons when amphibians are crossing the paths? How are we looking at which zones have the most endangered plants or rare species and birds? And so just going with I like the idea in concept of a pilot on every other day and bikes, but I guess it's a question or something I'd like to lay out at some point, like how can we lay out the two together? And the big elephant in the room here is population. I'm glad you put that right up in front and center, but I would also like to know how are we handling all of our other users' needs who also are growing in population, and how are we keeping up with that? So, and I just have to also second, how are we going to measure success that this meets what our role is? And then I'll look forward to the discussion here coming up on roles and responsibilities. So I don't know if there's some questions mixed in there, and I feel like I've got a big question mark over my head and not feeling much clearer or more qualified than I have for other presentations on this topic, just to be honest.
Well, obviously, answering all those questions is beyond the term of this meeting. The one thing I can tell you is that I see the long-range planning, the Trails Master Planning, as ultimately addressing many of the things you asked about. Because in any good trails planning effort, the first thing you go is where are the appropriate locations for different types of use. So that's, and that really begins with natural resources, mapping out natural resources, and then determining where is the most appropriate place. And then can we accommodate, all those different user experiences, somebody quiet time in nature, somebody on a flow trail, somebody an equestrian user. So that's really has to come through, that long range trails planning process. So I'll just leave that like that for now.
I guess I would just ask then, why are we doing a pilot study without a longer term plan? That would be my bigger picture back to, is it possible for staff to do a short term solution or enforcement or compliance?
Well, I think that's the effort of the pilot project is to, these are things we can do now to manage the current challenges and the conflict on the trails. And then the long range process has to begin and get going. But I guess, Linda, my thing that I tell people is we need to do something. And this is a start of looking at strategies, how we can manage conflict on the trails now. So otherwise, we just continue to do nothing. And I don't find that acceptable. I want to move forward and try some strategies that might work into the future. Okay, who's next?
So next we've got Igor, followed by Andrew.
Yeah, Jim, I hear your latest comment here. Doing nothing is not a good option. And I'm fully supportive of that, it's time to do that, to do something. This is kind of in conflict with kind of my classical training in science. And when you do a trial, you have controls that you have something to compare with. So say if you do a particular kind of an option, how do you know whether that's what made the difference that you're observing or that something else made that difference? And by having a parallel one where you don't do that, and then you can compare the results on both of those, you can really attribute to a particular thing. It's much more rigorous, it's a lot more work, and it's harder to do. But I think at least in some cases, maybe for some really high impact, high high consequence kind of aspects of this whole topic, it may be worthwhile to consider doing that. Kind of thing you might, anyway, I'm saying it's what I'm talking about is a lot harder to do, a lot more work to do, but is a lot more rigorous and more defensible. And I think we can't do all of them that way. I think it's just beyond capability of the resources. But I think in some cases, especially in high profile cases, it's worth considering doing that. I have two more items here. You mentioned this one great park that you recommend in Coyote Reservoir or Coyote Valley or something. I think that's a really wonderful kind of a category of things we ought to be doing, is that's working there. And what is it that's working there? And how is their situation comparable to ours? I suspect probably pretty comparable. And what can we learn from their experience where they've conducted the experiment, so we don't have to do it ourselves as well. We can certainly benefit from others' experience. I think that ought to be a big part of what we do, because if somebody has already gone through it, it's a lot better to pick up on their learnings. And if you have to do a little more to round out your picture, it's a lot less work than starting from scratch and doing a full-blown set of trials on your own. And for instance, looks like bootleg trails are really going to be a really important topic. I guess one aspect of bootleg trails might be one to consider. Say, if you are successful in doing away with bootleg trails, does that behavior then go onto the other trails, or what happens as a consequence? And is there some way to experimentally answer that question, or at least get some idea of what the unforeseen consequences might have been? So I think that's a really challenging thing to go do, and I don't think we can be super rigorous on everything, but on the really high priority things, we ought to try to apply as much rigor as we can, so that we don't fool ourselves, basically. And to reduce the demand for more of this, I would really make a big effort to try to learn from what other people have done, what they've had going on, and that would sort of be a way of just piggybacking on somebody else's efforts and looking at other people's successes and trying to emulate those.
Well, I can tell you that Don Rocha, who's the director of Santa Clara County Parks, has offered to host, if this committee wanted to go down and do a site visit down there in their parks and look at some of this work, he's offered to do that. He actually hosted our executive team down there, and we did look at some of their trails and their trails planning process. And he has offered to do that, or even join one of these meetings virtually to talk about their experience in trails master planning. So maybe we can work that out.
Yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing I would hope we would do.
Yeah, great. And Andrew?
Hi. Basically, this was an excellent presentation. And Igor kind of cut into my thoughts, so good job, Igor. I'm a former statistician, and I would like to see a little more rigorous set of metrics of success or failure, particularly because then you could establish something called a stopping rule, which means you stop the experimental phase and roll it out if it's successful. If it's not successful, that's basically what, yeah, like I said, Igor got everything I had on my list. So that's it. Thank you.
I appreciate all of those comments. If I had the resources, I would, do that control phase. Former high school science teacher, but that would be great to have the resources to do that. So we'll do the best we can in gathering some of this data. But you got to remember, this is also going to have a benefit in that we're trying to set a standard for collecting trail data generally, because we don't do a great job of that. On some of our regional trails, we do have really good data counters called eco counters, but I'm hoping that we can actually do a much better job of collecting some trail user data. And this is maybe getting our foot in the water or toe in the water here. So I look at it on that direction. You're right. How much rigor are we going to have? Probably not as much as you'd like. I can tell you that much. Okay.
Thank you. It looks like we have Elisa has her hand raised, and then I think that'll be the last Park Advisory Committee member, and we do have a member of the public as well. Elisa?
Thank you, Carlin. Thanks, Jim, for the presentation. It makes a lot of sense to me, the way that you're going to put this together, doing the pilot to gather data and see how effective all of these different options are when it comes to managing the user conflict at Briones, and hopefully we'll be able to apply that across the district. I just wanted to, take the opportunity to say good job with the presentation, and it makes sense to me the way that you're going to do this. And hopefully in the future we move towards a larger planning phase for our trail management. So thanks.
Mm-hmm. And we have a member of the public too, but I wanted to leave all of you with one thought. And our general manager, Sabrina Landreth, when I was talking to her about this, I told her, I said, most of the projects I've ever handled in my 40-year career, I felt I had most of it was geared towards success. I had more than 50% chance of success. This one here, I'm about 50-50. But what she said to me, I think is really important, everybody, to keep in mind is we need to try something, and failure is still a learning opportunity. We may learn what doesn't work, or we may learn that how we shouldn't do it, but we could try it a different way. So that's what's important here is we're going to learn a few things, and not everything's going to work. But we're going to learn a lot from trying this. And that's really the spirit of this project, is to do some learning, get some data, do some learning, get some engagement with the community. That's really what I think we're going to get out of this. Will all of these things be successful? I don't know. I'm hoping they will.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So we do have two members of the public who I think want to make comments. So I'll have Kelly followed by Jim.
Thank you. When we hear this phrase, continue to do nothing, that would imply that the district has been doing nothing. But in fact, nothing could be further from the truth. The Public Affairs Department sponsored a propaganda campaign that targeted trail users at Mission Peak and began in 2014. The Operations Department did its part. It came up with infamous nicknames for shortcut trails like the Scarface. In May 2016, the district asked a writer named Sarah Phelan at Bay Nature magazine to do an article. She wrote, quote, "Mission Peak, a superhighway of hikers seeking selfies, may get a new parking lot," end quote. But the Park District continued to do nothing. It never built a new parking lot at Mission Peak. And Mr. O'Connor points to some kind of a common trail design standard for water drainage. The district did build a new trail at Mission Peak, going straight up a steep hill at the Scarface. The new trail was poorly engineered in 2017. It had bad drainage, and it fell apart in just a few years. It takes a lot of money to build trails right. And that Scarface trail that you built recently is an embarrassment. The vast majority of people still use the main trail at Mission Peak, not the uncrowded alternate trails. The hiking permits at Half Dome in Yosemite were based on the false logic that smaller crowds equals fewer accidents. They hoped that restrictive permits would lead to fewer hiker accidents and deaths. But the number of incidents per person has effectively doubled since 2010, according to a 2019 study published in the journal Wilderness and Environmental Medicine. That's science for you. So I will say that Mission Peak has had great success in eliminating most bootleg trails, the most common ones, by putting up barbed wire fences everywhere. And that was our group. We backed that strongly, and we got a lot of resistance from the entrenched old park rangers, the operation department, who didn't want to put up all those dozens of barbed wire fences to block off the shortcut trails. They were fantastically successful, and most of the bootleg trails at Mission Peak have been erased, and the land is being restored. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim Hansen, and then Sue Rosenthal.
Hello, and thank you. My name is Jim Hanson. I was a member of the Trail Users Working Group, and I'm Conservation Chair for the East Bay Chapter of California Plant Society. Just wanted to share a few comments and recommendations on the importance of providing opportunities for full public engagement, which was of course mentioned, and on what is chosen to be in the project, and also the metrics, some things that have come up. We all know that this is a central way people experience parks, and so this is a very big deal. This pilot project, and I think it's worthwhile taking the time, as you're doing and staff are doing, and we are, to get it right. And I think also what the district chooses to try out and evaluate and doesn't is also very important, has implications. I would just say, and I'll just comment on this and I'll say it again, that temporary is, I think, something that should be seriously looked at right now, because changes to Brioni's park trail uses, such as permitting a mountain bike only use of trails, rogue or otherwise, is likely to stay that way unless the district is willing to spend a great deal of effort otherwise. But I'll say more about that. In the Trail Users Working Group, 90% of the folks said ensuring an inclusive planning process involves all user groups early in the process, including disabled users, diverse communities, environmental advocates, was very important. And of course, that's been touched on. But what are a few ways that might look like? We recommend that any trails at Brioni's be announced to everyone, and especially in the greater Martinez and Pleasant Hill area, everyone who's signed up online for the monthly e-newsletters, that it be publicized in the surrounding next door social media and other media covering the area, and that there should also be a project board before the start of the project at all park entrances with the contact website and QR code to access the website, make comments, and to get updates. But again, what is being included in the project? I just want to say that that the hiker population, and again, looking at comprehensiveness, something that members Spania commented on, we're hearing particularly about alternate day use, permitting use of legal trails, one-way directional flow. But one of the things that people also talked about in the TWIG was considering limited uses on trails less than 8 feet wide. And 74% of the group gave an unqualified yes to, I can live with that to make progress. And also a big one was closing off Boot Lake Trail. But think about it, these do tie together. If you open a bike-only trail, whether it's called temporary or not, how realistic is it that it would not continue in that way? I mean, I think it's just important to look at. Second,
So Jim, I'm sorry, we're going to ask you to please wrap up. Your 3 minutes is over. So.
Okay, thank you. I think the important thing is that what I didn't hear, and I think someone mentioned hiker-only trails, we didn't hear anything about providing, looking at the entire population and providing hiking and equestrian only trails. And I think that's one of the—
Okay, I think that's, I'm sorry. Yeah. We have another, thank you. Sue?
Yes, thank you. I'm Sue Rosenthal, and I am an East Bay Regional Park District user. For me, the issue of trail use is very important and very complex, and I'm very glad the Park District is working on it. Thank you. I'm just beginning to digest all of the information you provided in your presentation, Assistant General Manager O'Connor, and I'm not yet ready to comment. My head is still spinning, but I do have a couple of process-related comments. This is my first time attending a Parks Advisory Committee meeting, and I was a bit confused when I wasn't able to find meeting materials on the Park District's website as late as last Thursday. So it would be really helpful to know what's on the agenda and have enough specific information about the meeting topics, in this case for me, about the draft Briones Trail Pilot Project, further in advance to be able to provide some kind of input, to be able to comment at the meeting. And I'm also looking forward to learning more about the draft pilot program. And as Jim Hansen said, I'm hoping the outreach and the invitation to the public to comment will be extremely robust, really far-reaching, and really easy for everyone to do. I'm also hoping the outreach will include people who are infrequent park users, in addition to those who have, a horse in the race, so to speak. I'm not an equestrian, but anyway, so those are the two process-related comments I have.
Thank you very much. And I do know that there is a statutory requirement to get items posted within a certain period of time. So I think at least by Friday, if not sooner, the items do have to be posted to the to the website for all public bodies like this one. Okay, well, I don't see anybody else's hand raised, and it looks like you were just seeking some input from us. So thank you very much, Jim. And I think we're going to end this agenda item. And at this time, it's almost 6:30, and we keep losing members as it's getting later and later. So what I would like for us to do is just very briefly hear from Eric Fueller to preview item 5C, and then see if there's support for us to flip this to our September meeting, as our July meeting is a special meeting that's just being convened around budget issues for 1 hour. And August we go dark. So so I just wanted to see if there's support for that, because I want to make sure that we give people enough time to think about this important topic. And to the last speaker's point, the information didn't get out to the PAC until Friday. So hopefully people are in agreement that it would just make sense, since we have been concentrating so hard on these other items, to give some more brain power to this. And I see lots of hands raised. Okay, so maybe very quickly, if we could hear from Eric, and then I can see how people feel about, because I will have to leave at 6:45 myself. I will just share. So Eric, if you could just preview the item, I think that would be a good next step, please.
Sure, and just a clarification, I do believe we are scheduled to meet in August. We switched the dark month to July, but now we're having a special.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, just, and I agree with the approach that this is probably a meeting in and of itself, but there were some themes that emerged in the fact-finding work that we did. That's included in your packet. It's sort of designed to be findings. So the various themes in those findings from all the people we talked to were clearly the need to define the PAC's role. Clearly, the PAC should consider value-centered topics and controversial issues. So I guess we are with the trail issue there. Should offer community input to the board and to staff. The possibility of creating subcommittees, and I'll get back to that. And that the PAC should strive to be diverse in its membership, and should require, well, the last one is require less staff time. That came up several times. But just in terms of the subcommittee meeting, I think, Carlin, what we might want to do is ask if folks, we can send out a doodle poll, but we'd like to have a subcommittee working group on the rules and procedures. And so just to figure out even who's interested in it, we might want to send around a doodle poll. And then also those 6 items that we just mentioned are in the email communication with your packet. And if folks could just take time to kind of think those through and be prepared to provide input on them at our next meeting, that would be much appreciated.
Okay, so to take these a few at a time, one at a time. So I just want to see if there's support from folks to move this larger discussion, which I anticipate will take at least an hour, to our August meeting. So can I see like a show of, thumbs up if people have if that's okay with people? Okay, I see some real thumbs. I see some virtual thumbs. Okay, thank you very much for that. And then when it comes to the ad hoc committee, so yes, I think that was something that the executive committee had talked to Eric about, because I know that this has been a point of interest for many members of the PAC. So just to see who's interested in putting more time into this. So if we could send out that doodle poll prior to the July meeting, Eric, I think that would be really helpful. And then, so I just want to see if there's any other, I don't want to get into discussion about this because we have decided we're going to move this to August, but if anybody has any clarifying questions at this time about this topic or thoughts, because I've seen a lot of hands go up before Eric presented, please feel free. Okay, well, hopefully we answered the questions. And thank you again for correcting me, Eric, because different groups that I'm part of take different months off. So I'm glad that we will be all back together in August. And so with that, so just looking at the agenda, I would just say, so we're moving 5C to August. We'll have that doodle poll sent out to folks. Very quickly, Eric, do you have any staff comments to share?
No additional comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to see, do any PAC members have comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you. I will share with you, I'm going to be on vacation in July for this special meeting. So in advance, I'd like to thank Vice Chair Tsutsui for chairing the meeting in my absence. So you will not see me at that special meeting in July, and I thank the chair or vice chair for handling that. Board committee reports. I know that the finance committee did meet. We did hear from finance committee chair Arce briefly. Was there anything else? And I don't think that she is still on the meeting, actually. So I don't know if anyone who attended that meeting had anything additional to share. Okay. It doesn't look like it. Okay, so with that, I don't think there's any old business that I'm aware of. In case somebody wants to clarify for me. New business, I think just the last thing, I think we're still waiting to hear about the return to in-person or hybrid or what's happening with that. So I just want to, I know we've talked about it before. I'm not quite sure where we are with that. Okay, I see two hands, Neil and then Igor.
I just wanted to say about the July meeting, also note that it's a special time. So it's going to be at 10 a.m. on the morning of the 28th. And I think we're close to a quorum. So if you've RSVP'd that you're coming to the meeting, please do attend.
Yes, we have a quorum, but as I mentioned, I'm not going to be there. And so I think other people won't either. So yes, please get your commitment in. Okay, I don't see any other hands. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for your very robust participation tonight, all the very interesting, oh, Igor, yes. It looks like you're still on mute, Igor. And you're still muted.
Unmute, there finally. Had it 4 tries at it.
There you are.
I had an informational item to share. The city of Martinez looks like they've passed that measure, F, I think it is, to set aside a good piece of property on a ridge between Alhambra Valley Road and Alhambra Avenue, up on that ridge, where the city has had a proposition to do an assessment on property in order to raise the money to buy that land up there. And it looks like it's passing the 2/3 requirement. So there's going to be a good piece of land up there that is going to be owned by the city of Martinez. And I'm just hoping that there'd be a way for a little synergism to happen with the East Bay Regional Parks and others as well, to try to make the best of this opportunity.
Thank you for sharing, Igor. Okay, Susie?
Will we be getting an invitation to the board site tour for Friday with all the details? July 1st, board site tour at Ardenwood, I think.
Yeah, you should have gotten it already.
It came out quite a while ago.
The Ardenwood one?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, I'll look again. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. So at this time, I'm going to wish everyone a wonderful evening and adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much.